Welcome to Getting Neighborly in Fairview, Texas, the official community podcast for the town of Fairview, hosted by the Fairview Economic Development Corporation. On every episode, we spend time getting to know our neighbors and hearing the stories that make our town a community. This is Getting Neighborly in Fairview, Texas. Howdy, friends, and welcome to another episode of Getting Neighborly here in Fairview, Texas. I'm your host, Dave Quinn, and I'm super excited today to be joined by our good friend and resident in Fairview, Greg Satterwhite. So, Greg, welcome to the show. Thank you for giving us a few minutes of your time. Appreciate you meeting with us in spite of all the crazy and COVID. We've taken all the precautions. We got you up here in a mask, and we've sanitized everything. But thank you for giving us a few minutes of your time.
Well, I appreciate you having me, Dave. I've been looking forward to it. We've been talking or emailing back and forth for months, and so I'm glad it's finally happening.
Right. Well, you know, we were on a pretty good schedule with our podcast, and then, of course, the whole world sort of turned upside down. So thank you for being patient with us. So we like to start off the whole premise of the show is getting to know our neighbors, right? It's especially now more than ever when we've been cooped up in our house, and one of the best-selling points about Fairview is just the incredible people that live here. And as I've worked here and gotten to know the people, I'm floored by just the number of really cool people that are doing some really amazing things, and they're just kind of quietly doing those things. And so we created this podcast to get to know our neighbors and to see how we could help them, and really just to let other neighbors know, hey, you've got this really cool neighbor doing this, and maybe it's of interest. So tell us a little bit. First, let's talk about how you got to Fairview. What's your story and sort of how you became a Fairview resident?
Well, I'll back up a little before that. So I was born in Beaumont, so I've been a Texas boy my whole life. Never lived in any other state, and moved off to Texas A&amp, went to college, gig 'em Aggies, and I can see you're an Aggie, Dave. And eventually moved to Dallas to go to graduate school, and then I met Lori, and we ended up living in Dallas for a little while, and thought we'd never leave outside the loop. We were never going to live outside Loop 12, and we thought we'd be Dallasites forever. So then got a job way out in the suburbs and moved to Trophy Club, and switched jobs, moved into telecom, which was over in Richardson, and then so we moved to Plano, and we lived in Plano for probably at least 10 years or more. Got tired of the high fences and being close to your neighbor, and because I grew up on a 2-acre yard, and I wanted to get out, where it felt a little more spacious. So we looked at, we were just driving around Fairview. Oh, Lori's parents had moved out here to Heritage Ranch, and maybe coming to visit them, we drove into this neighborhood called Fox Glen, and we were driving around like, oh, this is a pretty cool neighborhood, and there was this one house in a cul-de-sac, and we're like, whoa, that's awesome looking. Look at the backyard in that thing. And we, it was out of our price range, but we were like, well, let's keep looking at it. Let's think about it harder, And we ended up making an offer on the house, and then I lost my job the day after I put in the option check. I had to call up this guy, and I was like, Mr. Larson, if anybody here knows Mr. Larson, I can't remember his first name, but I was like, hey, man, Nortel went bankrupt, and I lost my job.
Man.
So then, he's like, oh, no worries, I'll tear it up. He hadn't cashed a check yet. So then about 2 years later, we were going to see my wife's parents, and we said, let's drive back through that neighborhood again. See if it, still had that same allure, because we just kind of like fell in love with the neighborhood. And that day, the real estate agent had put the sign in the yard at the house right next door. She just stuck it in the yard that day, right, probably half an hour before we drove through. And we were like, okay, maybe God's speaking to us here. Something's going on. I don't know. But we called her up, and they're like, no, you can't come see it. It's not even really on the market yet. It's still pink and purple inside, So anyway, long story short there. It's long story long. We ended up buying that house, and we've been here for nearly 10 years.
Found your home.
What's that?
I said you found your home.
We found our home, yeah, and we love it, and I don't ever want to leave, so we'll see.
Right. Well,
Until I can't maintain the yard anymore.
So, man, holy cow, what was that like? You lose your job. Is that where you got to your entrepreneurial journey started there, or was it still a little longer in the path?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I had always had entrepreneurial desires, I guess, and it was in me somehow. I don't know how. My dad never was an entrepreneur. I guess my brother was, but I had started a company. Okay, so I went to SMU for grad school, and around that time is when I started my first company. And it was an apartment locator service. So I had done apartment locating when I was in college as just a part-time job.
Yeah.
And then, years later, I heard about this company doing something that I thought was interesting. I'm like, oh, I could do something like that. And I put together an online apartment locator service where I gave people money back. So apartment locators are like real estate agents. They make money they make a commission. And so I'm like, I'm going to give half the commission back to anybody who uses my apartment locator service because it's all online and there's nothing for me to do. And that didn't work out so well, but I did that for years, and it was just a side gig, and ended up selling that to another apartment locator service. But this was all while I was working at Nortel, and because when I got out of grad school, after a couple of years, ended up at Nortel, and I was in the telecom industry, and it was great for a while. It was just like it was the telecom boom, and then the telecom bust, and I stuck into that for a long time. And then so right after that finally went kaput, I got another job. Well, I thought about doing something on my own, but I had a mortgage and 2 kids and cars and stuff like that. And I was
that
like,
changes the dynamic a little bit.
We still lived in Plano at the time because we didn't buy the house in Fairview. But I got a job, pretty quickly, and it was still in telecom. But from that point forward, I was looking for a company to buy. I wanted a company that was making money because I didn't want to, quit my job and not have a paycheck to pay for my mortgage and my wife and kids. So for the next 5 years, I was looking at different companies, and I looked at dozens and dozens of companies over the 5-year period, and finally found this one that actually stuck. I was like, wow, okay, I can kind of resonate with that one.
Right, and so now this is your Outhouse tickets.
This is Outhouse tickets.
Now, tell people what that is and what you do.
Outhouse tickets is, we sell tickets, what we call on the primary market. So our customers, the end customer is a ticket buyer. You buy a ticket to go see a concert or something, and so yeah, that's a customer. But the people that I really treat as my real customers are the venues, the people who own the venues or are putting on festivals or any kind of event. Really, you've got a small honky tonk, and you bring in a band every week, and you got to sell tickets. So I'm the ticket guy, and we will list all their events, put all of it online, give people the ability to go online, buy a ticket, just like most people have bought a concert ticket at some point in time online, and so we're not that much different than any of the other bigger players, but we're small. All of my customers know me. We've got a relationship with everybody. I've got, I don't know, well, I say they all know me. I've got a couple hundred customers, a couple hundred venues that I work with, but good relationships with everybody, and so that's kind of what sets us apart from the ticket masters of the world, is that you can actually call me on the phone. I own the company. I've got a vested interest in you, and the size of my customers, working with these small to medium-sized bars and places out in the middle of the country who are selling, concert tickets. They love working with somebody they can actually talk to.
So is it? Do you also like communities, or you said festivals? So if I'm a community somewhere and I want to host an event, and I need someone to kind of manage that process, I'm going to sell tickets to it. That's the kind of thing that you do, or?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we've sold, we've done balloon festivals, worked with a number of small towns, mostly across Texas, that have done different events. And, you know, so if a city wants to run an event, for example, say we all know the city of Allen does their 4th of July fest. And so I've talked to them before. They've never sold tickets, but they were like, hey, we're thinking about selling tickets. I'm like, I can help you organize all that. You know, we even help places book bands and things like that as well. So, but any kind of event really can, that needs to control admission into the event, you know, because we have, when you buy your ticket, you print it at home or it comes to your cell phone, you bring it to the event, you use our ticket scanners, scan you in. So then, you know, we validated that you paid for your ticket rather than just bringing a piece of paper that anybody could have printed off the internet or whatever.
So if somebody is doing even like a training, I guess, if they booked a hotel suite and they're going to have 200 people come to this event, you could do that for those types of
we've done things like that too. Yeah.
Okay.
The majority of my customers are, like I said, the small to medium-sized venues. And like I said, I bought the company. So the guy who started it was from East Texas, and he was a country music fan and knew a guy that owned place called the Electric Cowboy out in Tyler or somewhere like that, and he said, hey, what if I keep showing up and it's always sold out? What if we can figure out a way to sell tickets? And this was about 15 years ago. It was kind of the beginning of the whole online internet ticket. I mean, he was one of the first online ticket companies, and he couldn't find anybody that really worked like he wanted it to work. So he just like, okay, I'm going to hire a programmer and just do it myself because I got my first customer, and then it just grew from there. So we have a lot of country and Western type of bars and stuff, but sell tickets to any kind of concert, any kind of event, festivals, pretty much anything that you need to sell tickets and get people in the gate or in the door.
And now you're selling nationally, I guess. You have clients all over the country, or do you have a certain area that you focus on, or is it?
We are all over the country. The majority of my clients are Texas, Louisiana, Nebraska, for whatever reason. Kind of picked up a few customers there and started, if anybody works with us, they refer us to whoever they know because
it's a relationship-driven
everybody
business,
loves working pretty much with me. I mean, it's a very small company as far as the number of people go. So, but yeah, we got customers all over. It can be anywhere in the U.S., but those are kind of the primary ones. That's where most of our business is.
Well, sort of the thing we're dealing with right now, COVID and the shutdown. I know, we talked about early on a little bit about this, just, what that's been like and what do you think, what do you see the future of this? I mean, when we get past this, we get open, do you think live events is still a relevant a thing? I mean,
so that's a good question. And, in March, when all the COVID stuff started happening, sales started going down, and March wasn't too bad because that's kind of when everybody started freaking out and shutting doors, and April and May and June were terrible, and basically everybody's afraid to get out because everybody's telling you can't get out, and so all the doors were shut. But then when they started opening things back up, there was this huge pent-up demand because people still want to get out. So there's a couple of points there, I think, that, September and October were nearly record months for us. I mean, it was, compared to September and October of last year and the year before, we were up 35% in sales.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy because people are just like, we're ready to get out. We want to go hear some music. Yeah, tired of being at home. But like I said, a lot of my customers they're not in a big metroplex. So these aren't sitting in the city of Dallas, for the most part, or, out in Houston. It's in the smaller areas, more slightly rural, and there's, fewer restrictions and things like that. But I've found that the model has changed. It's not all this general admission anymore where you just walk in and pack the place and everybody's standing shoulder to shoulder. But we have the ability to sell reserved seats, reserved tables. So, for example, one of my customers is in Plano. It's called this place called Love and War. It's this restaurant down in Plano that has live music all the time. And they called me up and said, "Hey, we've got to figure out a new way to sell because we can't squeeze people in here and pack them in shoulder to shoulder." So I said, "Well, let's set up reserve tables. You sell each table as a package deal, and you've got 4 tops and 6 tops, and people buy the whole table, and that way you kind of follow the rules and regulations that the city's putting on you that you have to do, and keeps people separated and keeps them safe and everything." And that's worked out extremely well. So
people are sort of buying the experience and their space in the room, so they don't feel like they're crammed in there and they're worried about COVID. They're buying some. Yeah. They're not worried, right?
They're not as worried, comfort right? I've done that for quite a few different customers who normally it was just cramming people in there because they want to get as many people in as you can. But the table sales have done really well because honestly, people like to know where they're going to sit. They like to pick a reserved seat, and they're willing to pay a little extra for that. Now, one thing that sets us apart is we keep our fees really low. So, I grew up as a musician. I played the drums as a kid. I still play drums in a band every once in a while and stuff like that. And so that's what really attracted me to this business. I'm like, oh, it's in the music biz. I wasn't a good enough drummer to play in a professional band.
It's your way in without having to be in it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm involved in music, and it really brings me joy to work with these people and to give people the ability to buy a ticket and not get, fleeced with these giant service fees. And, but, we're a profitable company. We still make money, and we help, but we just don't charge a whole lot for it, So, that was one of the things that really drew me to the company was, this is a fun industry. I love it. I love meeting all these great people who own these really cool places, and they're all interested in the same thing. They all want to bring live music to the public and not charge a ton of money for it.
Right. So talk to me about one of the things. I mean, you're a business owner now. You've been through a good time. You've going into a dip here, or hopefully you're now coming out of that. But what is one of the best lessons as a small business owner that you've learned in operating this?
That's a good question. So I've been at it now for about 5 years. When I first bought the company, which I've heard is kind of normal when you buy a company from somebody else, I lost some customers. I lost about half a dozen of my largest customers, and I kind of started worrying a little bit. I was like, I
little anxiety there.
I borrowed money to buy the business, and so I had this SBA loan and all this stuff, and but what I've learned, so there was one example, and then the next example of basically worrying was COVID. It's like, oh my gosh, who expected this? And then it's coming back out of it, and now we're going back into another little dip. But the lesson I've learned, I think, is that if you're working hard at it, you've got good relationships with your customers, you don't give up. You keep at it. You keep servicing your customers well, and you've got a good business model. Then things are gonna turn out okay.
Right.
So
being able to kind of push through that, the rocky, uncertain times.
Yeah. Having a little patience and just trusting that things are going to be okay.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So one of the things I was looking at in your bio that sort of being in the economic development world is that you're actually a real estate broker. What is that? Tell me about that. We didn't talk about that. I just saw that.
So, well, I mentioned the apartment locator service a long time ago.
Right. Okay.
That I did a long time ago, and to be an apartment locator is just like being a real estate agent. So you have to have a real estate license, and to sell real estate, you get a salesman's license, and then you have to work for a broker, or you get your broker's license. But it takes quite a few years and a lot of experience to get your broker's license. So eventually I got my broker's license because I got tired of paying a percentage of my fees to the broker that I was paying. This was after I started this apartment locator service. So I got my broker's license. I've had that for a long time. And I got out of the apartment business because I just didn't like the business all that much. But I've I've continued to stay in real estate by sponsoring other salespeople or other companies that need some sort of a real estate service, such as property management companies. Property management companies have to have a licensed broker, or they have to be associated with a broker to do property management, legally anyway.
Right.
And so I sponsor a couple of companies that do that. And I just charge a low, flat monthly rate. And then I also, because I was in the apartment business for a while, I sponsor a couple of different apartment locators. And so there's a few people who just never wanted to go through the hassle of getting their broker's license. Or maybe they're young and they've gone and done sales for a little while. And they're like, okay, I want to go off on my own. I want to start my own company. I'll sponsor that company as their broker. And like I said, just charge a low monthly fee.
So you allow them to sort of build their brand of real estate company,
yeah,
until they get to the point where they can get their own brokerage license.
Exactly. I've set it up so that they can use their own company name and things like that.
Okay.
So you
that's cool.
You could start Dave's Real Estate, and assuming that name's not taken, which it probably is, but and then I would be the quote sponsoring broker or the broker on record for that company.
Okay.
But you'd still have to have your license. You got to be a real estate person.
Right. You still got to do your thing.
Yeah. Anyway, that's just that's a side thing. And I just never wanted to get rid of my broker's license because it's useful. Every once in a while I run into somebody that either wants to sell their house or wants to buy a house or just needs advice. And so.
Right. You're able to help them out.
Yeah.
So it's we're talking about the customer, your for Outhouse tickets. Is there a certain size venue or does it make sense for you to work with? Give us some idea of like who's the right person that if we come across that person and we want to send them your way, who does that? What's that look like, or who does that look like?
Yeah. So I've done festivals. We did an event at the Cotton Bowl, and so that holds 50,000 people, or however many people the Cotton Bowl holds. And I've got little customers out in East Texas that might sell 1 or 2 tickets a night.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty small. And hopefully they sell more than that on bigger nights. But really, my sweet spot is these venues that are, say, 500 to 1,000 people, and they're selling an event once a week. They'll do a concert every weekend, or maybe a Friday, every Friday and every Saturday they put a little concert on. That's not to say I wouldn't love a customer that did, a show every night of the week and is selling tickets nonstop. But that just seems to be the sweet spot, and I resonate with the people who own those kind of places. Typically it's a mom and pop kind of place that owns a place like that and is selling 500 or 600 tickets on a weekend. But then I've got quite a few venues that are, say 2,000 to 3,000 capacity, and those are great, and I love those. But the sweet spot's probably around 500 or so.
Okay,
could be anybody. Like I said, I'll sell tickets for. You want to sell one
ticket?
Ticket
is a ticket.
A ticket's a ticket. I mean, it's a hassle to set it up and everything like that. But so one's not the best, but the more the better. But if it's too big. I'm not Ticketmaster, and I don't want to be Ticketmaster. So the big ones I'll leave to the big boys, and I'll take the small and medium sized ones. I actually ran a fundraiser for a little while when all the COVID stuff hit, because all these small venues, it was called Save the Small Venues, and I put it out there, tried to reach as many people as I could. I wanted to raise money to give to these small venues, because without the small venues, well, I'm not going to be in business, because that's, they're my customers. But I was feeling for these guys because they had to shut their doors and they weren't able to let anybody in. So that was, an attempt that I made to try to help with the whole small and live music community.
Right. Man, so I have a good friend that has the Defining Audacity show, and he works with a lot of live music artists. He brings them on, and Texas music artists. Mm-hmm. And it was almost heartbreaking to watch. I mean, they not only from a livelihood, there was obviously that, but it was like this desire to give their gift to, the world, and they weren't able to do that.
Yeah.
And what a interesting thing to watch.
the live streaming that people have tried to get that going. And, there's a lot of artists that have been successful with that. The majority of the artists that have been successful with live streams are the big giant artists, the Ariana Grandes and those kind of, really big name people. But we've done, so the way we've set the system up we've set it up so that we can sell live stream tickets. So if somebody has, like I've got this one great customer down in Belton. He owns it's a barbecue restaurant with a big giant backyard, and he can fit 3,000 people in this place and big stage and everything. But he'll every once in a while in some of his shows he'll bring in a video crew and they'll video it and they can do a live stream. And so we can sell a live stream ticket, and you buy the ticket, you get a link to log on and view it, and then you're essentially watching it kind of through our website, but however they've decided to, whoever they've used to host the live stream. So,
right.
So we've done a little bit of that, but most of the artists that I deal with, they're small, medium-sized artists, and people don't really want to watch them on a live stream. They want to go see them live. So.
Yeah, there's something about the experience, right? It's the energy in the room. It's not that their music's not good, but it's the added experience that makes it worth work.
For sure.
Greg, this has been awesome. Thank you for the conversation. Again, thank you for coming in, and it was nice to meet you in person and to know that you're here in our community in Fairview doing this. It's I guess you're doing it from home now. Is that?
Yeah. I used to office at the cotton mill in McKinney. If anybody's ever seen the old cotton mill building, they've got offices in there. If you weren't aware, and ended up moving out of there, and then I just been working at home.
Okay, well, it's been an adjustment, right, for us all to sort of
definitely
find this new office space. Well, we thank you for coming out, and again, thank you for agreeing to come on the show. And giving us just a few minutes of your time to let us to get to know you. And hopefully, if you're listening to this, you know someone who has a venue that needs to sell some tickets, or you have an event that you want to sell tickets to. You now have a neighbor in Fairview that you can reach out to, and he can help you out. So tell us where people can find you if they wanted to get in contact with you to do that.
Yep, so the website is outhousetickets.com. And all my contact information is there. If you want to send me an email, it's greg@outhousetickets.com. And
doesn't get much easier than that.
Doesn't get any easier than that. Love to chat with you. And if anybody knows anybody that has a venue or even wants to sell tickets to a backyard party, it could be anything. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Well, Greg, thank you again. Appreciate the time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on another episode of Getting Neighborly here in Fairview, Texas. I'm your host, Dave Quinn. Make it a great day. Thank you for listening to this episode of Getting Neighborly in Fairview, Texas. If you're a business owner interested in calling Fairview home, contact our office by email at edc@fairviewtexas.org or visit us on the web at fairviewtexasedc.com. And if you're a resident and you know someone we should hear from, nominate them at fairviewtexasedc.com/neighbors.